Hello and welcome to another episode of Just in Time World Building. I am here today with George Kolev. And George, don't you just want to introduce yourself to the viewers?
Thank you so much, Marie. Hello, everyone. My name is George or Georgi, and I've been in the history sphere for quite some time now. I started out as a writer for Kings and Generals, picked up animation, and eventually my paths crossed Cody, who is, as you probably know, the creator behind Alternate History Hub and Pointless Hub. And we started doing videos together back in actually tomorrow is the 2-year anniversary since our first video on the Battle of Varna. Originally I was just supposed to do Outremer, but things worked out so well and he had to focus on his other channel that I've picked up a lot of the slack on Alternate History Hub, and we've done tons of different videos from what if Chernobyl was a way worse disaster to what if Germany actually won World War II through Dunkirk. We recently did a big series on Napoleon, which starts off with the French winning in Trafalgar. And the whole goal of Alternate History Hub right now, as it always has been, is to, in a funny, experimental way, tell you about history and tell you what could have been, for which you need to know what actually happened. And over on Outremer, it's sort of this visual novel, which started off as what if we take one of those scenarios and really expand it and have character arcs and storylines and flesh out the characters while breaking a lot of medieval stereotypes, all centered around the Fourth Crusade.
Right. And indeed, so I
That was
just
a
want to
mouthful.
for my people just put this into perspective. Like I always say, if you're going to, build your fantasy world, you're going to want to know our world's history in order to use that to build out your own, right?
Absolutely.
And so, what I'm busy with at the moment on Just in Time World Building is, in fact, a channel on genre and so on. And one of the big genres in fantasy is alternative or fantastical history. So, where you diverge from our history and you add in some fantasy elements. So, and that's the reason why I asked George to, come on the channel, is so that we can talk about how you do that, how you diverge from history. So I guess my first question to you, George, and this applies very much to Ultramar, which hit its
Yeah.
big divergence point at the end of its season one. Um, how do you decide on a divergence point?
Hmm. That's a really, really good question. And it really depends. Um, so so sometimes we want a particular outcome, or at least we want a particular setting. Maybe we want a particular starting point or a particular ending point. So for example, if you ask yourself, do you want Napoleon to win? Okay, so now you have an idea of where the end point is. But so where do you begin? And so there's a long version of this, and I'll give you a couple of different scenarios to get a really good idea of how I approach things outside of Outremer, which is the most complicated. I'll go chronologically, starting with Napoleon. So I looked at every potential way Napoleon can win. A lot of people point to France, to Russia. What if he didn't invade Russia? To me, the problems with Britain are already too deep, and I
Hmm.
don't even think that a success in Russia could fix that. But to get that answer, because that's just intuition, I need to do a ton of research to make sure I'm right. Okay, what if Spain something when things went way better there? And obviously you can make the same outcome with different approaches and changing different things, but at the end of the day you want something that is as close as possible with the smallest change possible. Some people like to go super fantastical and make big changes or make changes to drastic things. I don't like that. I don't like when you meddle with um, personality character traits. What if the big bad mustache man who shall not be named didn't do this? Well, okay, now you're changing how he thinks and who
Yeah.
he is. And if you change that, you have to go back and change a bunch of other things. So that's not clean. The cleanest thing you can do to me is changing things in our timeline that were random. So, for example, changing a weather pattern that was weird, or changing one small moment in time, a bullet going a little bit off to the other direction, a cavalry charge that goes either better or worse than our timeline. Make a small change and make that the only change. Make no other steps before or after the point that you've decided. So with Napoleon, we chose Trafalgar because if Trafalgar is a massive victory, you have a way to go into Britain and everything cascades from there. But it's never clean. The way history is, the needle never goes like this. It
Mm.
goes like this, and with every change, things are going to get more complicated. So that's what we did with Napoleon. With Germany, we did the same thing by changing. So the Battle of Dunkirk, which is very famous in the Christopher Nolan movie, I had this epiphany after studying it for so long that no one talks about. The bombings on the British forces and the Allied forces, they were for 11 days. But I believe 9 or 8 of those days were extremely cloudy and rainy. So the Luftwaffe couldn't drop any of its bombs accurately. And in those days, there's almost no casualties. If you look at the 2, 3 days, which are kind of in the beginning and the end of that period, the casualties are massive. You have thousands dead, ships destroyed, a lot of equipment destroyed. So our change is, what if the weather was clear for 2/3 of those days? The British army was captured because the ships could never save them because of the bombing runs. And then you have the human element of all of those British mothers wanting their children to come back home. And the other epiphany is going through history. I went from the 100 Years' War through the 30 Years' War, and there's a very human element. We care more about hostages than we care about dead people.
Oh, yeah.
Dead soldiers become martyrs. They galvanize the population to send more troops to the war. But hostages you want to save, and you're willing to make concessions, ideological, moral, ethical concessions, including dealing with Germany. So that went on for a long series that I'm very proud of. And then the last example, I want to give your viewers a scoop, is we've had we're almost done on a video that we release in 2 weeks from the moment of this interview. What if the Soviets went to war with the Chinese in 1969? Lovely concept that almost happened and was going to be destructive to humanity. And once again, I had this epiphany after watching a really good video on the disunification of Mongolia, that basically Stalin was going to take all 2 parts of Mongolia, which people don't even know there's 2 parts of it, but he was going to take both parts of Mongolia. There was a massive referendum. The Mongolian people wanted to unify under the Soviets because they've been under the Chinese for so long, and he was going to do it. But for his 70th birthday, Mao comes into Moscow, gives him some amazing present, and Stalin gives him massive concessions and decides that he will keep out modern-day Mongolia and what is today the autonomous Chinese region of Inner Mongolia separate. But what if we are in a time, and this happens way back, like the seed of this divergence is 15 years before 69, on the birthday of Stalin, way before he dies. So if he decided to go just no, what if Mao didn't make the trip? And what if he decides to keep Mongolia, both sides of it, under the Soviet Union? That's a massive, massive issue to the Chinese, a massive security threat. And with all the things we know from our timeline, for example, China attacked Taiwan and the Soviets didn't back them. China started a big war with India and the Soviets didn't back them. And there was so much friction, and there was a skirmish on the border. And to me, this is one of my favorite divergences, because you plant the seed early, and between the seed and your big divergence, almost everything is the same. But the ticking time bomb that you've set over here explodes in 69 to nuclear proportions. And you can apply this in fantasy, in sci-fi, in world building. Just don't have tunnel vision into your goal, your starting position. Make it like history. Plant seeds that become big flowers after some time.
I think that that is a great way to put it. And I think that that leads us very nicely into how do you decide what changes? So, I mean, with Ultramere,
Yes.
I was almost sure when it started that it would be Theobald surviving that changes because I know the history of the Fourth Crusade.
Yeah.
The Fourth Crusade ended up sacking Constantinople because they had no money, and they had no money because Theobald died.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because without his leadership, there just wasn't enough men. Blah 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 blah. You know who was Boniface? Boniface led the crusade in his
Yes.
place, and he just was not. He did not have the same pull with the French lords. Um, and so they ended up. I think it was Zara first.
Yes.
They sacked Zara,
Yeah.
and then they sacked Constantinople. Um, and I noticed when in the episode that's just dropped that you changed that from Zara to they sacked the Cathars, which is a little early for the Cathar situation to explode, but not that early. I think you only brought it forward by about 80 years, maybe 100.
No. The Cathar persecution is right on cue. Like with
Is it?
Alchemar, the historical accuracy is insane. One of the main characters in Alchemar, Simon de Montferrat,
Hmm.
he is extremely religious. Like if you have a scale, you definitely have Theobald over here on the. Everybody are religious at this point, but some are fanatical,
Hmm.
others are I'm into the arts, let's say. And
I mean, everybody's a little bit Deus Vult at that point.
yeah. But Simon, he's way up top, right?
Yeah.
So he was super against Zara. And the moment he found out, he instantly bailed. And what he ended up doing is starting the crusade against the Cathars, which is 5 years after the sack of Constantinople. So it's 5 years. However, um, the war against the Cathars has the really big papal allowance to destroy them where
Hmm.
you see them has already begun by the time of our events. There's a massive amount of Cathars in southern France because of autonomous Toulouse doing whatever they wanted.
Hmm.
So the seeds of that happening are already there. But what you see in Outremer at that episode you reference, it's not a full-blown sack. It's not a war. It's a party of people bringing in a bunch of Cathars. They burn them at the stake to make it believable that Theobald is consulted by a Jew.
Hmm.
So the Cathars are literally sacrificial lambs for the people of Troyes to believe that this guy should be among them.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an exchange.
Yeah, the
Um,
Cathars were such an interesting because I mean they're basically the inheritors of the Gnostic gospel. The with the God is the God that people worship is the bad guy. Anyway, I got
we
the
can talk about
demiurge,
them for
the
days. And for any
demiurge.
fantasy writers out there, the Cathars make amazing building blocks for some fantasy. They live in a weird time, and they have belief that men and women should be equal. Insane.
Yeah.
That making children is a sin. That everything in this world is created by the devil, including the church, which the Pope didn't like that all too much. Um, they didn't eat meat. There's so many crazy, weird things that they didn't do, and there were so many of them. And weirdly, they were created by the Crusades because there was so much devastation in the Holy Land that it created this movement of people who crossed Anatolia, then crossed the Balkans and created the Bogomils. Then they crossed Bosnia and they ended up settling in southern France because the southern French didn't like paying a lot of taxes to the church, and these people were against the church, so they were cool with them because they were the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and they grew to a massive amount, and that prompted one of the biggest I don't know if we can say this word, um
Starts with a G and ends
Starts
with
with a
really
G.
bad things.
Uh, I think the two biggest G things that from the Middle Ages are completely forgotten about and erased
Mm,
from history is what the Normans did with modern day Northumbria in
yeah.
England, and what Philip does with the Southern French. We're talking about a completely different dialect. The people in Southern France were as different from the Northern French in every way you can imagine. Every way, culture, custom, language, songs, dances, everything you can imagine as the English are from the Spanish. It was insane. And that whole culture was wiped out because of these beliefs. It's 20% of the French population.
When people ask me why, which I sometimes get because I talk about many different cultures. So they ask me, why did Europe colonize so aggressively? Why did it export itself so violently when like China also colonized, but they colonized more with with tribute and so on. They never so aggressively exported their culture and with violence and so on. I mean, obviously there was violence, but it wasn't on the kind of the European kind of scale. I'm like, hurt people, right? Well, hurt countries. And we've
Yeah.
been hurting each other since the Roman Empire.
Yeah, there's been a lot of hurting. And interestingly, you can trace that with language dialects.
Yeah.
I did a huge study on this, and basically what you find is that the less variety your language has in terms of dialects, the more authoritarian and centralization they at least used to be at some point. And the you see this like Italy to this day, northern Italians and southern Italians, there's some dialects that they can't even understand each other because they by the time they had a centralizing body to tell them everybody speaks this way, it was 19th century England, the dominance of London, the dominance of Paris, the dominance of Madrid, all of these countries, that happened way earlier on. And what fascinates me the most is Russia, because I've had a lot of Russian friends, and I'm baffled by the fact that Russia is this big. It's massive. They have almost no dialects, which baffles me. I'm like, okay, tell me, how does a person from Moscow speak compared to a person from St. Petersburg or compared to a person from Kazan? And they're like, what? We all speak the same Russian. Ukrainians speak a little different, Belarusians speak a little different, but in Russia it's all the same. And to me, that's like, oh, that's not good. That's
I,
not good at all.
I can tell you exactly how that happened. They went authoritarian, 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 authoritarian state, authoritarian,
Yeah.
There
There,
has never
it's
been any other
it's
kind of government
brutal.
in
It's
Russia.
brutal. Yeah. So if everything, and you can put this into world building, like if you're making a very militaristic, oppressive, authoritarian empire, have them all speak one language and just stomp down on the other
Oh,
minority.
you talk different. Bah.
Boom. No culture, no custom, goodbye. And if you want to have the opposite of that, have them speak so many different languages and arguing each other because they're always fighting against each other. That's, I think, a really good touch.
There are only 5 million people who speak Finnish.
Mm-hmm.
We have a bizarre amount of dialects, and there are some people I don't understand what they're saying because they've mixed in some Russian or they've mixed in Swedish, and they like I just like what?
Yeah. It's you guys with the Uralic, right? You
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
just oh, Indo-European, no thank you. Oh, everybody around me speaks Indo-European, not me, not me and the Hungarians. We're doing our own thing. See ya.
So so the Finnish language came every other language spread up, right? From the in Europe, spread up with the Indo-European languages. The Finnish language came around the side and up through the Ural Mountains like this. So
Yeah,
somebody came in here at the top.
yeah,
And the odd thing is, some of the Native American languages have got words that have the same root as
yeah,
Finnish words. So there's some speculation that what happened was there was a group of humans who, they were living in the East, and
Yeah,
some of them split to go, you know, so far east they ended up in the West, to reach America, and others went over the top of the Uralic Mountains, but that's why there's a common route there somewhere.
yeah,
So that was very interesting to me. Like
that's
the
really
spread
I
of
love the
languages are
distance.
super interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one of the things that I found very interesting in Ultramar, especially in this latest episode now,
Hmm.
is that you still have the attack on Constantinople and the politics around Constantinople. So tell me a little bit about how you ripple those changes through. Like, that there's still going to be things around Constantinople because the 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 levers that caused that situation in the first place, the weak Anglovan, the city on the edge of being conquered, all of that is still there.
Yeah.
So how do you decide how that now plays out?
Okay, so I spent a lot of time studying this period because I did a documentary over on Kings and Generals. I've done several long form documentaries on different periods. I've done one on the First Crusade, I've done one on the Fourth Crusade, and I've done one on the Mongols. So I've spent a lot of time there, and when I was studying it, I fell in love with the First Crusade because to me, that is the one of the best murder mysteries in history. The question is, who's to blame? And there's so many different threads going to so many different places. And I found a thread that there was this British aristocratic guy called Stephen Runciman, who, while the London was being bombed, he took his money and traveled all across Eastern Europe and the Middle East. And this is happening in the middle of World War II, right? No one is doing history, no one is doing a lot of excavations all that much. No one is reading all these texts. And here he is, knowing Hebrew, knowing Latin, Greek, and Arabic. He gets these texts, spends a lot of time with them, and on his deathbed, he later admits that his was not a work of history. His was a work of epic fantasy writing. And he hates the Crusaders. He writes tomes and tomes about them. He hates them because not what they do with the Muslim people, what they do with the Eastern Roman Empire. That he specifically is painting a narrative, and because he's not a dry author, he does write incredibly interesting. He does make up half of his stories, but he writes incredibly interesting. He was the first to get a source material, and he got a bestseller in the 50s in America, all across the world. It was so culturally dominant that it basically erased any conversation and discussion. Everything that you know about the sack of Constantinople is probably wrong because you're basing it off of this source material. So then I started digging, and by the way, his life is incredible. He lived an incredible life, but I tried to find the thread. I went back, I went forward, I went everywhere I could, and I could see clearly that there was a lot of blame all around. The Pope was to blame, the Byzantines were to blame, the little Alexios, the big Alexios, the betrayals, the all the way back to Alexios the First, who made the deals with the Latins and made Constantinople so reliant on both the Crusades and the Italian merchant states. All of these things are a factor, but when you boil it all down, you discover two things. One, Theobald's death and his quick replacement and this idiotic scheme to, okay, let's just do it anyway. We started organizing this massive tour. Let's do it anyway, even if an Italian is going to lead a 90% French army. What could possibly go wrong, right? Venetians, there's blame all around. But at the end of the day, this wheel starts to turn because of the little Alexius, because of him breaking out of prison and going to the Holy Roman Empire, and because the Holy Roman Empire is in dispute with the Pope and there's another successor, and because his wife is the little Alexius's sister. It's a crazy murder mystery, and when you put it all together, it's beautiful. And the answer to your question is Theobald's death is the most important thing I could have moved, and that doesn't move the plot in the HRE. So I have to be faithful, because when you make a change here, all the other things are still happening. You can't make them stop so that you can still play with this toy. And early on, I was like, okay, do I want to tell the story of this adventure? Or do I want to do world building? Do I want to build up the whole world? And eventually we might get, hint, hint, we might get a perspective from the Muslims, from Egypt. We might get a perspective from the Byzantines. Because to me, that's fair. Because if you don't have that, then it becomes black and white. We're the good guys. All the time on the narrative is spent on us. And the audience, even if you tell them these guys are spending all this time with, they're the bad guys. The audience is going to go, no, I like them, so the other guys are the bad guys.
100%. It is so important to have that multi POV perspective from different places. I think that, one of the best books, fiction books that I've ever read about the Crusades, and one of the things that, man, I love her work, is an author called Judith Tarr, who is an actual medieval scholar. And she wrote about the Fourth Crusade. And she had a character inside the city and she had a character outside the city.
Yes.
And she showed very much that by the time that the Franks came the second time, because the first time the chain pushed them back, but and the Varangians, but the
Yeah.
second time they overran and then they broke through and so on. By the time that happened, nothing could have stopped it. It was at that point, everybody had made so many mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there was no
Yeah.
stopping it then. Like it was what it was. Um, and
Yeah.
it was such an interesting time because that crusade went so wrong. I mean, I'm I'll be fair, I think all crusades went wrong from the perspective of the people who got crusaded on.
Yeah.
But I mean, it went so wrong from like the actual kind of what the Crusaders were trying to achieve. But I think in the end, they put Boniface on the throne of Constantinople, if I remember that timeline correctly, like our actual one, which is
No, which is
insane.
even weirder. It's even weirder. Like, I don't know if you want to go into the alternative or the historical. It's so bizarre.
Yeah,
It's really crazy.
like
No,
everything that
they
happened in
put the
that
second in.
situation was just,
They put the third in command, kind of,
yeah.
kind of.
Yeah, they put Boniface's brother or something like that is who
Baldwin,
ended
no, no,
up with it.
no. Boniface, he was too. They believed he was too connected to the Byzantines,
Mm.
uh, and he had too many sympathies for them. So they put Baldwin, who is from
Baldwin.
Flanders,
Yeah.
who is in Belgium, and yeah, like he was more kind of easier to control. There's many layers to it, but no, it wasn't even him.
Mm.
It's really crazy. I'm hoping that Outremer really fleshes out and shows the viewer exactly where who's to blame, what went wrong, how it went wrong, and there is actually a point to be made on how justified it all is. But I don't want to give too many spoilers away. All I'll say is that the citizens of Constantinople, uh, th- that they did some crazy things themselves as well.
No, 100%. But I mean, nobody deserves to be overrun with war. Like
Yeah,
I don't think there's a human alive who deserves to like have war done upon their country.
yeah,
In the long and the short of it kind of principle.
yeah.
Um, okay, so we've spoken about quite a lot on our list. Uh, for the nerds among us, where do you actually do your research? Like, how do you do research? How do you approach it?
That's uh, I read a bunch of books through a site that lets you get a bunch of books. Obviously, I delve deep. The two biggest research notes I have when it comes to history, be it alternative or not, have always been the same for quite some time now, and I'm really proud of discovering them. Not that I was the first, but it's a really cool tip. One, um, depending on the history that you're researching, but let's stay with the Crusades for a moment. Most of the Crusades are a French affair. So what you should do if you really want to get a better understanding of things is you should go to the French Wikipedia. You will normally find a lot more details, a lot more names, and better chronology from there. If you're looking at something like the 30 Years' War, go to the German Wikipedia. If you're looking at something like the Spanish succession, go to the Spanish Wikipedia. There's a lot of really cool things. The English Wikipedia, English being the dominant language, anyone can come in, anyone can put things in. Not to say that the French can't do it, or the Greeks can't do it, but it's less messy, I've found. The other tip is let's, whatever your period is in, go again to Wikipedia and find the year of the events and go by, okay, what happened in 1194? Go through everything and make a list of the things that are important to you. So ignore the stuff in Mesoamerica, ignore the stuff in China if you're focusing on the Crusades, let's say. And you're going to get the this is what I always do. My first run in before I go deep is, okay, let me feel the world. What are the big events? And let me put in my mind some milestones. Oh, wow. Well, did this really happen this many years before the moon landing? Oh, wow. Did this really happen this many years before Magna Carta or after it? That way in your head, you're not focused on the year itself. If you're doing the French Revolution, my tip is look at what happened 20 years before and after it, just those big years on Wikipedia. And then you're going to have a better, not tunnel vision view of the full picture. Always try to look at the full picture because you're always going to miss something if you don't.
100%. And I think that that is a really good note on which to close this interview. And I'll see you all soon for another episode. And there'll be links down below to everything that George is involved with. So go ahead and check those channels out. And George, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marie. Goodbye, everyone.